Hi everyone. Okay, so I just wanted to make this video because even if you're comfortable with the basics of RNS, it can still get you stuck. You can still get stuck on certain situations, especially maybe if you see a larger molecule, you might get overwhelmed. So I just wanted to go more in depth here. The first thing I just want to review the basics of RNS. I talked about that in my review session, but we'll go over some of them here. So first thing, we need to understand what a stereocenter is, okay? So a stereocenter is a point where there's four distinct groups coming off of it. So four distinct substituents. And we're gonna be focusing on carbon stereocenters. Typically, these won't have any double bonds in them, right? Because if they have a double bond, there's only three things that can come off of it without a charge. Okay, so first thing you want to do, recognize those stereocenters. Then recognize, R is when we have the priority of our substituents going in a clockwise direction as opposed to a counterclockwise direction. So R stands for right, S stands for sinister, which means left. And then you assign this priority based on the atomic number. Okay, so I just wrote out the common ones that you'll see. This is probably the only ones you're going to see: sulfur, oxygen, nitrogen, and so on. And so those priorities, sometimes we don't have to branch out, okay? But sometimes we're in a situation where we have two of the same atom, like two oxygens or two carbons. So then we need to branch out, okay? And how long do we need to branch out? Well, until we see a difference, okay? So until we see a difference. So here's a situation we might run into where, so we know what our first priority and our last priority is gonna be, our oxygen and hydrogen. But then we have two carbons here and here. So we have to figure out which one of those branches has the higher priority. Let's say we branch out once. So here, here we've branched out and we saw that we had two carbons. Okay, let's branch out again. Well, we run into carbons again. So we do it one more time. On the left branch, we run into an oxygen, but on the right one, we just run into a methyl group. And so the one on the left will have that higher priority, and I labeled that as 2. Okay, another example would be, we have the same situation except for those bottom branches down there. So we still have our oxygen at first priority, hydrogen at fourth priority. And then we have to decide whether the carbon here has a higher priority or the carbon there. So let's say we branch out. Okay, so we branched out once, we saw that we had two carbons. We branch out again. Okay, well, we run into two carbons again. The next step would be to branch out a third time. When we branch out a third time, we run into two carbons on the left branch over there, but only one carbon on the right, okay? So even though you don't want to think of priority as a summative game in terms of atomic mass, like you don't want to say, okay, well, this side is bigger and has more mass, so therefore it should be higher priority. That is not the case, okay? It's more of like, it depends on the atomic number. So what we really had over here was, okay, so we realized, we had to branch out all the way up to here. Okay, we had two carbons. What it really was is two carbons versus a carbon and a hydrogen that wasn't written out, okay? So that's why this has higher priority, because of the atomic number. We can kind of add the amount of carbons or oxygens. Let's say like 2 carbons is better than just 1 carbon. 2 oxygens is better than just 1 oxygen. So in that way, it's kind of like a last resort thing, but it's not a sum of how heavy, let's say, the entire branch is. That's not how it works. Okay. So the last scenario involves double bonds. Okay. So here, very similar situation where we have to branch out, not just once, because now we have carbon on the left here, carbon on the right. We have to branch out a second time. But when we branch out here a second time, we see we have a double bond there. Okay. So that double bond counts as 2 carbons. It's as if the scenario was the same as the last one where there was 2 carbons coming off of there. Okay. So you can consider it like 2 carbons as opposed to just 1 over here. Okay. So that's why this side would win out. All right. So that's why it has the second priority there. So 1, 2, and 3. All of these examples would give you S. Okay. Because they're all going counterclockwise. But that's because the lowest priority group, in this case, it's hydrogen for all of them. The lowest priority group is in the back, okay? It's dashed. That means it's going kind of like into your computer instead of out, like toward you, which is what the oxygens are doing in these examples. Okay. So now let's take a look at, this will be an easier one. I want you to take a second, you can pause the screen and see how many stereocenters do you see here? Okay. So hopefully you've paused. This molecule has 2 stereocenters, okay? There's gonna be one over here and one over here. I want you to ask yourself, did you think this was a stereocenter? If so, I see where you're going, but this substituent here is symmetrical, okay? So let's say if this was a stereocenter, or we're trying to see if it's a stereocenter, if we go this way, or if we go this way, we're gonna have the same substituent on both sides. And remember, a stereocenter, we need 4 different ones. So because this ring is symmetrical, that stereocenter won't work. Okay, that won't be a stereocenter. All right, so we have 2 other options I want to take a look at with you guys. Okay, so in this top stereocenter we're going to look at first, we have 2 oxygens that we can decide if are first priority or not. And we're always going to have that hydrogen in the back assumed if it's not written, or if nothing else is written. So it's going to be our lowest priority group. Okay. We can also tell which one is our third priority group because these are 2 oxygens here and a carbon. Okay, so that carbon is definitely not going to be as good as those 2 oxygens. So it's going to be number 3 automatically. Okay, now I have to see which oxygen has the first priority. Okay, so to do that, we need to branch out, right? So here we're going to branch out once. Here we're going to branch out once. We reach a carbon on both ends. Okay, so that means we need to branch out again. All right, so let's branch out one more time. Okay. In the top branch, we just reach 1 carbon. Okay, but in the bottom branch, we reach 1, not just a carbon, but a nitrogen as well. Okay, so the oxygen on the bottom there, this one, is going to have the highest priority. That's going to be labeled 1. Okay, and then this one will be 2. Then we can just follow 1, 2, and 3. And this will be R, okay? And we don't need to flip R to S because we know that our hydrogen is in the back, our lowest priority group is in the back. If it wasn't in the back, we would just simply turn this R into an S, okay? But we don't need to worry about that in this example. Okay, so I'm gonna clear this up so we can look at the other stereocenter. All right, so in the other stereocenter, I'll make it a different color. We have an oxygen, a nitrogen, a carbon over here, and a hydrogen I did not write. Okay, so I don't have this I don't have the wedged or dashed on this one, but I can quickly create that. So let's say this is wedged. Okay, that means that we'll have our hydrogen dashed. Okay. Now we know our hydrogen is going to be fourth priority. Okay. And we have an oxygen, a nitrogen, and a carbon here. We know our carbon is going to be third priority. Okay. Then this is not too bad because we don't have to branch out. We know oxygen is going to be first priority, nitrogen is going to be second because of the atomic number. Okay. Then we'll connect everything together. And this is just going to be R. Okay. So for both of them, they were R. Okay. In this molecule, I want you to take a look and see if you can figure out how many stereocenters there are. Okay, so feel free to pause and think about it. So I'll assume you've paused by now. And this molecule has a total of 8 stereocenters. Okay, so let's see where they are. There's going to be one right here, one right here, here. This is another one. Actually, I think there's 9. Just kidding. Okay, there's 9 of them. Where am I missing one? Okay, yeah, that's all of them. All right, so we won't have to do all of them. I'm not going to go through all of them with you, but I'll just pick a couple. This might be a good one. I'll mark it in red here. Okay, so let's take a look at that one. So automatically, we have a nitrogen, a carbon, and another carbon with an assumed wedged hydrogen. Okay, so automatically we know this is going to be number 1, number 4, and then it's between those 2 carbons. So one of the carbons up here, if we branch out once, we just get a sulfur, okay? If we branch out at the bottom, we have 2 oxygens and a nitrogen, okay? So this stereocenter, again, we only look at atomic number, okay? So not like, we can't like add the sum of different atoms in that way. So the sulfur is going to win out, okay? Having 1 sulfur is better than 1,000,000 oxygens, okay, or nitrogens. So that's why it's going to have higher priority. Okay. So originally we would look and we would say, okay, this is S, it's going counterclockwise, but the R is not in the, or sorry, not the R, the hydrogen is not in the right place. The lowest priority group should be in the back over there. So all we need to do is flip this S into an R, and that would be the answer for the stereocenter. Okay. We can take a look at another one. We can look up here. Okay, so we know there's going to be hydrogen there. It's going to be 4th priority. Just because the highest priority group is not wedged in this case, that's okay. Our highest priority group is going to be the N, the nitrogen. Okay, so then we have to look, okay, there's a carbon here and a carbon here. We need to branch out. So when we branch out here, we just reach a carbon. But if we branch out on the right, we see 2 oxygens, the equivalent of 2 oxygens and a nitrogen. So this one will win. Okay. And the lowest priority groups in the back, we're good. This is going to be S. Okay. All right, so last one we can look at is this one up here. Okay. So I'll give you a second when you think about it. When you're ready, you can just unpause. Okay. So at the stereocenter, we have a methyl group. We also have an assumed hydrogen, which is going to be 4th priority. Okay. An ethyl group, and the rest of this molecule. Okay. So that means we have 3 carbons. That means we need to branch out. Automatically, when we branch out once, we just reach a bunch of hydrogens on that methyl group, okay? So automatically we know it's going to be 3rd priority. Whereas on the right side, okay, well, we reach at least another carbon, all right? In the bottom branch, we reach a nitrogen and carbon after branching out just one time. All right, so that means this will be our 2nd priority and 1st priority. We'll connect 1, 2, and 3. That'll give us S. We don't need to flip it because the lowest priority group's in the back. Okay. Last thing I want to look at is this molecule. You can count how many stereocenters you think there are and come back. You can pause now. Okay, so let's count where the stereocenters are. We have one here. We have one here. I think there's 4 in total. And one right here. Okay. This one won't be a stereocenter, even though there's 4 things coming off that carbon, because we have 2 of the same groups, those methyl groups. Okay. Let's just look at one example here. I think the best one might be maybe this one. I'll make it a different color. I'm running out of colors. Can you tell? Is that different? Okay, we'll just make it blue. All right, so here are lowest priority groups in the back. Okay, hydrogen's is going to be number 4. And then we have a couple options that could be highest priority, either that nitrogen or that sulfur. And remember, our sulfur has a higher atomic number, so that's going to be our number 1. Then nitrogen is going to be number 2 compared to carbon over here, which is going to be number 3. Okay, so all you need to do is connect those, and then you have an R configuration. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any other questions. That's all the examples I had for today. If you're comfortable going through these, then you should be fine for the quiz. But otherwise, just let me know. I'll have office hours on Sunday evening. All right.